Welcome back. For those of you who are struggling with your mortgage payments at the moment, try to negotiate a better deal with your bank. They would still prefer to have you in the property paying part of the mortgage rather than going through the procedure of foreclosure, which usually costs them a whole lot more money. I knew someone who was having trouble paying her mortgage, and she managed to negotiate a year's holiday from paying the mortgage while she got herself back on her feet. It's a bit like the negotiation we talked about in an earlier show. You have to be willing to ask. And also, if one bank doesn't want to negotiate, try and find them one that will. Depending on the size of your mortgage, you may consider moving to a smaller property so that you can either free yourself of debt altogether or at least reduce your monthly payments. If you owe a lot of money on your property and you can still get some equity out and get rid of your mortgage altogether, I'd suggest that you seriously consider taking that option. Then you're free to buy later when the prices have come down further. If you have a property in a block of flats or a condominium where you're sharing the service charges, if many people in that block of flats have their apartments foreclosed, then the people who are still living there have to take on the added burden of those maintenance costs. And if there are a lot of people who are out of work and not buying merchandise, then cities have to make up money that they're not collecting for taxes in some other way. And the chances are one of the first things they're going to be doing is increasing your property taxes substantially. Now let's take a look at investment properties and land. People really don't know what to do with their money. And because property investment has been such a good bet in recent years, there are many people itching to get back into the market. But is this the right time? It's very difficult to pick the top and the bottom of any market. Even the experts will tell you that it's almost impossible. But what you can do is to see the trend. When I had my property investment company in the UK, things were going beautifully and I had an impressive portfolio. All of a sudden, I started to get glimmers of an economy that was just on the brink of starting to fail. While everyone else was still rushing around buying properties, I thought this would be a good time to sell off everything that I had. I didn't want to unload all my properties at one time because I was well known in the field and I didn't want other real estate agents to think I was doing poorly and they might try to take advantage of me by persuading me to sell my properties for less than I thought they were worth. So I unloaded them 2 or 3 at a time, quietly took my profits, and just as quietly I got out of the real estate market just before the economy really started to fall. With the degree of change that's happening right now, trends are much more difficult to predict. And for the average person who is not well informed on the housing market, it is best to reassess your finances, the type of mortgage that will best suit your needs in the coming years, identify what your possible needs may be for housing in the coming years, and wait for the market to stabilise a little before you make that ultimate purchase. For those of you who are looking to invest, remember that during a recession or a depression, people have less available funds and may not be able to afford to rent. Many people either share a property or they move back in with their parents, so you may need to drop your rental price. This is all right if you've no debt on the property and you've paid in cash. Then you won't be too affected if you cannot find a tenant or if rental values go down for a few years. I know a landlord who, during the severe downturn in the 90s in the UK, who had 3 properties that sat empty for over a year. Luckily, he had no debt on those properties, so it didn't lead to financial ruin for him. But it was still very frustrating that he had to pay all the property taxes and bills on those properties whilst they sat empty for such a long period of time. Buying land is even more risky, as you don't have a property on it to bring you a regular income. You'd either have to hang on to the land until such time as prices go up, which could be many years away, or you could build on the land and hopefully find tenants to bring you an income. However, I know people who own sections around the world and they're having great difficulty selling them right now. In New Zealand, I know of a couple who have reduced their section by 50% and they still cannot find a buyer. And I'm seeing this happening around the world. Land, unless you're using it for yourself, is largely unproductive and doesn't bring you an income. So unless you're using it yourself to grow vegetables for farming, livestock, and you have a business that brings you income from your land, then it's not really the best investment during a downturn economy. So to summarise, if you're having trouble making your mortgage payments, try to negotiate a better deal with your bank. Consider downsizing in order to reduce your debt. Don't take out too much debt and make sure you've plenty of buffer funds. And if you rent, You're flexible, you can move quickly, and you'll be able to pick up the bargains at a later date. If you're buying, try to pay cash for the property. If you're an investor, this is not the best time to be buying. Rental yields are low and large future capital gains may be several years away. I had an email from a viewer, Martin J, from last week's show. And he says, I have a lot of credit card debt and it feels like I'll never get out of it. Other than buying anything else on credit, what can I do to pare it down? Well, thank you for your question. Look at your finance charges for the month and make sure that your payment for each month is above and beyond the finance charges. At least that way, some of that money is going towards the principal. Also, try to negotiate a better APR with your credit card company. Next week, we'll be discussing mortgages, what they are, what to look out for, and what to do in the current economic climate. See you next week.